So earlier in the meditation session, you generated a bodhicitta motivation, altruistic motivation for being here, participating in this retreat, doing the things that we're doing here. So take a few moments to remember and refresh that motivation. Make it the reason that you're sitting here now, listening to this talk. So, in our tradition of Buddhism, we are encouraged by our teachers to generate the altruistic motivation, the bodhicitta motivation for everything we do. And for some people, this is challenging because they may feel, I'm not really sure about attaining enlightenment, if there's really such a thing as enlightenment. Or even if you don't have that problem, you may have the problem of thinking, I don't think I can do it. That seems too big, too vast. And so those are some of the things that can occur in our mind, making it difficult for us to feel like 100% sure about having a bodhicitta motivation. So that's completely natural. Because, one thing, we don't grow up Buddhist, most of us. Okay? We only meet Buddha's teachings partway through our life, sometimes in our youth, sometimes middle age, sometimes later in life. And so it's kind of all very new to us. So we're not like Tibetans or people in Asian countries who might be born into a Buddhist family, and so they're exposed to Buddhist ideas and beliefs and practices from a very early age, and it's very easy for them to just kind of go along with it all, and they don't have too much trouble, maybe, to believe in the existence of Buddhahood and the possibility of attaining Buddhahood. So for them, that may not be so challenging. So, but for us, yeah, it can be challenging. So if you do find that challenging, and if you're sitting there thinking, this doesn't feel real, this doesn't feel genuine, I want to become a Buddha to help all sentient beings, it's not really coming from here. Don't worry about that. Don't feel bad about that. One thing you could do would be just do the best you can to have an altruistic motivation, meaning caring about others. Yeah, I think for most people that isn't too difficult. Most people do have at least sometimes the thought, I want to help people. I want to help the world. I want to make the world a better place. I want to relieve suffering. Yeah, so I think everyone, you know, otherwise you probably wouldn't come to Buddhism because Buddhism is such, places so much emphasis on love and compassion and benefiting others. So I think anyone who's attracted to Buddhism does at least sometimes have those kind of sentiments of wanting to benefit others. So get in touch with those kind of thoughts and feelings that you have probably experienced in your life and were part of your reason for being interested in Buddhism. And then just think, yeah, I do want to help others. I want to benefit others. And I'm here in this retreat or doing this practice, whatever, because I want to benefit others. So that may be something that feels real, genuine, something you can, it's really coming from your heart. So that's one option. And then you can just think, okay, bodhicitta, becoming a Buddha to help all living beings, put that on the shelf for later. Maybe as time goes on, you study more, you practice more, you learn more, then that will start to become more real, more genuine. Another option is if you are able to accept the idea of enlightenment and that you have the ability, the potential to achieve enlightenment, and that's something you would like to do, but you're still kind of just, taking your first steps on the path, then you can just think, yes, I do want to achieve that as a long-term goal. You can think of it as a long-term goal, and realistically, you're just taking the first steps in that direction, and that's okay. Yeah, I mean, that's where most of us are at. It is a long-term goal. It is something that takes a long time, and I still feel very much like a beginner myself, even after 50 years. Um, um, but this expression they use in Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, fake it until you make it. Yeah. So, yeah, if you do have some goal that you wish to achieve and it seems like a long way off and you're not very close to it, just to think, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's where I want to go. I do want to become like the bodhisattvas and eventually become a Buddha to benefit others. And it's a long way off, but I'm making my way there. And so just do the best you can to generate that motivation, even if it's just very, very teeny tiny. But the more, the more we think about that and try to generate that state of mind, the more it starts to feel genuine and real and becomes part of our mind and part of our life. So fake it till you make it. That might help as well to overcome any discomfort you may have about, generating a bodhicitta motivation when you still feel like it's a long way off, not very realistic, and so on. And I thought to start this morning by talking about a few other kind of problems or challenges that can occur in a retreat, because it may be, for some of you, this might be the first time you're doing a retreat. And also these apply to meditation in general. And so, these kind of problems or challenges can occur if you're doing a daily practice of meditation. So one common problem is sleepiness. And I thought of that because, this is like the first day of the retreat, and I don't know what you were doing before you came here, but you may have been very busy. You may have had a long journey and just packing and making all the preparations and doing all the things you had to do so you could come here for a week. So you may have been very, very busy. And this is like, oh, finally, you're here and you can relax, and then so that's really normal. It's really normal to experience sleepiness in meditation. And also maybe you're not used to getting up so early. this isn't your normal schedule to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So that can take time to get accustomed to. And so what's recommended is when we do experience sleepiness during a meditation session, also like here during a teaching, um, it's good to not close your eyes all the way, because closing your eyes is is almost like an invitation for the mind to, okay, now it's time to sleep. So in our tradition, and not other Buddhist traditions as well, it's recommended that when we meditate, we keep our eyes at least partially open, because yeah, closing the eyes is like easy to fall asleep. And so this may have been explained to you, but just in case it hasn't. So we keep our eyes partially open and have them looking downwards. So have your gaze looking down onto whatever's in front of you, the floor, your table, or whatever. And that way there's some light coming into your eyes, and that helps you to be more awake. But your eyes aren't wide open, which can make it easier to get distracted looking at things going on around you. So keeping the eyes in that position is helpful for meditation. Although it may take time to get used to doing that, and initially it's hard to keep your eyes just partially open. But try to do that, and the more you do it, the more it becomes natural and easy. So that's one antidote to sleepiness. Also, sitting up straight. We're always advised when we meditate to sit up straight. So if you're slouching or, yeah, like this, then again, it's probably hard to stay awake. But I think keeping your back straight helps bring up your energy, so that yeah, less likely to sink into sleepiness and drowsiness. And then just practically make sure you get enough sleep at night. If you're staying up until 1 o'clock in the morning, reading all these wonderful books on our bookshelves, you're not getting enough sleep, then that could be a problem as well. So make sure you get enough sleep at night. And usually it passes. My experience. Another thing too is. Don't meditate right after eating a big meal, because the energy is going into digesting the food and less energy to do mental things. So it's usually recommended to have a gap between a meal and a meditation session. And my experience in doing retreat and even daily practice is like if sleepiness comes, kind of like our usual reaction, our usual way of dealing with sleepiness is to think, oh, I need to sleep, and then go take a nap. But that's not the case. Sometimes, like in an afternoon session after eating lunch and it's maybe a warm day, I'll feel so sleepy during a meditation session. It's like so hard to stay awake. But what I find is if I just resist that temptation to go lie down and take a nap and just try to keep myself awake, it passes. It's just a temporary experience that doesn't require a nap to get beyond. So it will go away by itself. Right? So if you can, that's my experience, but everyone has their own experience. But you can try that. Just try to resist it, keep yourself awake, and then it'll pass and you'll be awake again, alert and awake. Yeah, so those are some things to deal with sleepiness. And then another big problem that happens in meditation is distractedness. So that's where we're trying to be focused on whatever we're doing, whatever we're meditating on, but our mind just keeps running away. Other thoughts are interfering with our practice. So again, that's completely normal, and it's also understandable in in a situation like this, where you've just come from a different place and different activities, and this is a very new situation. Your mind is still kind of there where you were before you came here, still thinking about, processing, reacting emotionally to the experiences that you had. So that's completely normal, completely understandable that that would be the case. And yeah, we want to concentrate, we want to keep our mind here and focused on our practice, but it's just the habit of our mind, the tendency of our mind to be thinking of lots of other things. So we can't just immediately cut that habit, stop that habit. And in fact, just to relate a story, um, one monk that I know, a Western monk who spent a lot of time in retreat. One time he stayed in retreat for 2.5 years, solitary retreat, just focusing on practice. And he said that it took him 6 months to get his mind settled down and stop thinking about the outside world and other things and so on. 6 months. So when I read that, I thought, oh, phew. So if you're here just for a week, it's not realistic to think that you can just completely stop thinking about your life and experiences that you had before coming here and what's going on in the world and so on and so on and so forth. So those thoughts will most probably keep coming up. And try not to be upset with yourself. That's another thing we have to look out for, is beating ourselves up when we do have problems like this, like sleepiness or distractedness. Then our mind, not everyone does this, but it's very common, a very common Western problem to kind of be critical of oneself, beat oneself up, have all these negative um, thoughts about oneself and one's practice. So try to avoid doing that. Just be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself, and just understand that this is a big problem. It is natural to have distractions coming up. And there's really no magic cure for distractedness except to just train the mind to keep coming back to whatever we're doing. Just realize, oh, this is a distraction. And I didn't come here to be thinking about what's going on in Washington or what's going on at home. I came here. Okay, I mean, of course, sometimes it is helpful to think about those things and process our thoughts and feelings, but not during a meditation session. You can do that during the breaks. Yeah. But yeah, during a meditation session, ideally we try to make this resolve. Okay, I'm sitting here doing this meditation on Medicine Buddha, or meditating on precious human life, or whatever, and I'm going to keep my mind focused on this and bring my mind back when it wanders away. So just be really kind of firm with yourself. And you might think of experiences you've had in daily life that are similar to that. For example, if you're having a conversation with somebody, maybe a family member or a friend or someone you're trying to help because they're feeling distressed. And so this is an important conversation, and you really want to give your full attention to this person and the conversation that you're having, and really bring all the best of your energy to that. So in that kind of situation, you probably would be able to bring your mind back to that conversation, yeah, because it's important to you. Or studying, we've all had the experience of studying for exams. There's an exam coming up and we really want to pass that exam. And so when we're studying, preparing for that exam, if other thoughts come up in our mind, we probably have the experience of just saying, no, I'm not going to do that. I really have to study and bring our mind back to what we're studying, the project that we're working on at that point in time. So I think we all have experiences like that in our regular life, our normal life, of bringing our mind back to the task at hand and focusing on that. So it's similar. What we need to do, we need to bring that into the practice of meditation. Just remind ourselves, no, I came here to meditate. So let's come back to this. So whatever works for you, whatever thoughts or methods work for you to bring your mind back. But that's what we need to do, is to just keep coming back to what we're supposed to be doing at that moment. And then another problem or challenge that can occur in a retreat or in a daily practice of meditation is having expectations. So teachers, many teachers, for example, Lama Yeshe, used to say to us, don't have any expectations when you meditate. And realistically, that is almost impossible. I think it's just our mind, our nature as human beings. Maybe animals do it too, I don't know. But as human beings, we just have expectations of things. And this means, you know, prior to coming to a retreat or prior to whatever it is we're doing, we have thoughts about what it's going to be like. Yeah, we may even have fantasies, whole fantasies about, you know, wonderful meditation and feeling blissful and whatever, but things like that. Um, and these are a killer. This is really a killer, yeah, because we just don't know. We really don't know what is going to happen. We don't know what we're going to experience. And it may not be what we expect. And probably 99% sure it's not going to be what we expect. And so the danger of having expectations is then if it doesn't turn out the way we expect, we may feel disappointed, discouraged, upset, angry, blaming. We might, blame other people or the situation or whatever for, the lack of getting our expectations fulfilled. So all kinds of unpleasant or even ugly thoughts and emotions can come up. Or we blame ourselves. We think, oh, I am hopeless. there's, there's this thing that sometimes happens. I don't know if everyone, but you kind of look around at the other people in the retreat and you kind of think, oh, they look so happy and so peaceful. They're having really good meditations. They're doing really well. I'm the only one who's crazy, who can't keep my mind concentrated, who's having these problems. Has that ever happened to you? Yeah. So, yeah, that isn't helpful. I mean, can you really see what's going on in their mind? Do you have clairvoyance and can see what is happening in their mind? Probably not. So if you don't, then this is just another fantasy, another invention, fabrication of the mind that we don't really know. And the chances are they're having the same kind of problems you have, maybe even worse than you. So yeah, so don't let your mind get caught up in that. So yeah, try to let go of expectations and just accept whatever experience you have. Do your best. I mean, of course, ideally we try to have a good motivation, a good intention, do the best we can in our practice, but do it without expectations of getting certain results. Yeah, having fantasies about what is going to happen in a retreat. I have this funny, some of you have probably heard it before, but I find it's a really funny experience or story about this. I was once teaching a 10-day introduction to Buddhism and meditation course in India. And there were about 60, 70 people, mostly new, just starting off learning about Buddhism and meditation. And I'm pretty sure that I did talk about this point. I did advise people, don't have any expectations. And on the third day, during a break, one young man came up to me and he said, I've been meditating for 3 days now and nothing has happened. And he said, I don't want to keep meditating if nothing's going to happen. I'm not sure what it was he expected to happen, but yeah, he did. I think he did say something like, other people are having experiences and I'm not having anything. Nothing's happening to me. So yeah, he was thinking about leaving, giving up after 3 days. So I thought that's kind of a classic example of having expectations, and also the danger of having expectations, because you quickly give up if you don't get what you expect like that. Lama Yeshe used to poke fun at us. He would say, you people, you want instant enlightenment, just like you have instant coffee and instant money out of this ATM machine and so on. So you expect enlightenment to be instant as well. Well, it's not like that. It takes time. So try to be aware of expectations, let go of them, and try to just do it. Just practice and see what happens. And then another problem I already mentioned is self-criticalness. So be on the lookout for that. Any thoughts sort of berating yourself, criticizing yourself, beating yourself up. And understand that that is not appropriate. It can be helpful to ask yourself, would I talk like this to somebody else? Right? Would I say these kind of words to another person? I mean, maybe you would, but would you do so and feel good about yourself? Or would you feel, this isn't nice? It's not nice to talk to other people that way. So why talk to oneself that way? So being critical, nasty, having those kinds of thoughts towards oneself isn't appropriate. It's negative, it's afflictive. So be on the lookout for that. And if it does happen, just try to replace it with kindness to yourself, kindness and patience. And it may also be helpful to think of the Buddha. Like we're meditating now on Medicine Buddha, and spending quite a bit of time visualizing Medicine Buddha. So just think, Buddha doesn't feel that way about me. Buddha isn't saying those kind of words about me. Buddha has nothing but love and compassion, unconditional love and compassion. No judgmentalness, no criticalness, no aversion, none of those kind of things. This is just my mind, my habitual tendency. But that's not how the Buddha sees me. So try to put yourself in the mind of the Buddha and imagine, the Buddha looking at you with this pure, unconditional love, acceptance, kindness, patience, forgiveness, all those kind of qualities. And feel, yeah, that's how I would like to feel about myself. It may be hard at this moment, but at least try working towards that. Self-compassion, self-love, self-acceptance, those are really, really important. Learning to be kind to yourself, learning to be a friend to yourself, not your own enemy, not your own worst enemy. Okay, so those are just a few thoughts I had to share, and I may think of some more later. And then before getting into going through this sadhana, I also thought it might be helpful to just, because last night I mentioned, or I read a quotation from Lama Zopa Rinpoche about the mantra, the meaning of the mantra, and how the mantra encapsulates um, the whole path to enlightenment, what we call lamrim. And I'm not sure if all of you have learned a lamrim or are familiar with a lamrim. Maybe some of you are still new to it. So I thought to just briefly go through the main points of the lamrim, what that is all about. Um, and then for those who are familiar, I know many of you are very, very familiar with it, but it doesn't hurt to hear it again, review it, review the main points. And so one way of looking at the lamrim, and this is what Lama Zopa Rinpoche said with regard to the mantra, is in terms of three levels or three stages of the lamrim. And sometimes these are called three scopes or three levels, and sometimes they're called small, middling, and great, or initial, middling, and advanced. So there's different terminology used by different teachers. But anyway, these three levels. And so within each of these three levels, there are meditations, specific topics that ideally we listen to teachings. We receive teachings from teachers on these topics, and we can supplement that with reading books, studying, but they're all meant for meditation. They're all practice. They're all like topics to meditate on, doing analytical meditation. And the whole purpose of doing this kind of meditation is to change our mind, to transform our mind. So this is all based on the view that our mind has the potential to be just like the Buddha's mind. So last night I mentioned some of the main qualities of the Buddha, like omniscient mind, omniscience, knowing everything, seeing everything, and then compassion, universal compassion for all living beings, and then power or skill, having the ability to help each and every sentient being. So there's many, many, many amazing qualities in the mind of a Buddha. And we have the ability, the potential to achieve that. Our mind, and any being's mind, any mind at all, of any living being, has the potential to become like that, to become a fully enlightened mind. That's our whole goal in this particular tradition of Buddhism, is to transform our mind into the mind of a Buddha. But that takes a lot of work. It isn't something that can happen just by wishing for it or praying for it, or and it's also not something that can happen quickly or easily. But over time, continuing to practice, then this transformation takes place. So the meditations of the Lamrim are the main meditations we need to bring about that transformation of our mind. Slowly, slowly, little by little. So these three levels of the Lamrim contain these meditations. So the first level is sometimes called the small scope or the initial level. And so the meditations involved in that level are to awaken concern about the future, about not just in this life, in fact, mainly not this life, but future lives. So they're all based on the Buddhist view of reincarnation or rebirth. Our mind is such that it doesn't go out of existence when we die, which is what a lot of people believe, scientists believe, materialists believe. But I think probably most ordinary people in the world don't believe that. They believe there's some kind of continuation beyond this life. This life isn't just like a total end of everything, but there's something, whether you call it mind or soul or spirit or whatever, there's something that continues beyond this life after death. So in Buddhism, we say it's our mind, our consciousness that continues. And then it, if we haven't yet reached enlightenment or liberation, then it will take rebirth. It will be born in another form. We'll have another life after this one. And we don't get to choose. Yeah, we don't get to choose. It's not a question of choice, but rather it's karma that we've created in this life and also in our past lives, and afflictions, greed, hatred, ignorance. Those are the main factors that push us, or push our mind rather, to our next life. So depending on what's going on in our mind at the time of death, which in turn depends on how we live our life, okay, then those are the factors that determine where our mind will go. So if we're able to die in a state of mind that's positive, we have positive thoughts, virtuous thoughts like love, compassion, faith. Those are some examples of positive thoughts. If we're able to die in such a positive state of mind, then those are the conditions for us to have a fortunate rebirth in our next life as a human being, or in a pure land, like Medicine Buddha's pure land, Amitabha's pure land. There's various pure lands where Buddhas are there waiting to welcome us and teach us. But yeah, we have to have the right state of mind. We have to have the right karma to be able to be born there. But yeah, that's the ideal thing, is to be born in a fortunate situation in our next life and avoid an unfortunate one. So unfortunate rebirths would be, for example, as an animal, as a spirit, hungry ghost, where they have a lot of suffering. And Buddhism also talks about hell. It's like there's numerous different types of hell, but they're all situations of the most intense suffering. And so the main idea in this initial level of the lamrim is to make sure that doesn't happen. Make sure when this life ends, our mind goes from this life to the next one, we go to a fortunate situation and not an unfortunate one. And ideally, it's not just to avoid suffering, but because we want to continue our spiritual practice, going in the direction of enlightenment. And if we were born in one of those unfortunate situations, not only would we have a lot of suffering, but it would be almost impossible to practice the Dharma, to follow the path. Either we have too much suffering, or our mind just isn't capable of understanding the Dharma, like the case with animals. We always try to teach our kiddies about the Dharma and don't kill, and be nice to the chipmunks and so on, but that's why we have to keep them indoors. they just don't get it. So yeah, it's very clear that rebirth in that situation is kind of a dead end. And also, you're still creating karma, right? And so as an animal, you might be creating a lot of bad karma if you kill. If you're carnivorous and you kill, and you're creating more bad karma, we certainly don't need more. But it's not a good situation for a spiritual practitioner. So we definitely want to avoid that and be in a rebirth where we can continue to learn the Dharma, practice the Dharma, continue following the path, going in the direction of enlightenment. And so if you meditate on this, we do meditations to get this understanding in our mind, then that when we end up with a really strong determination to live our life in such a way that we are going in the direction of a fortunate rebirth in our next life and not in one of those unfortunate ones. So the most important thing we need to learn is karma. Learn about karma, and then be very careful about the karma that we create, to refrain from negative karma that would be the cause for an unfortunate rebirth, and create virtuous karma, which is the cause of a fortunate rebirth. So just to make sure we're living in accordance with karma. And then it's impossible to be totally, like, never do anything negative. But there's the practice of purification. So even if we do make mistakes, create some bad karma, or earlier in our life, before we started learning the Dharma, then we created negative karma. So there's the practice of purification to clear up that negative karma. So that's kind of the essence of that first level of the path, the so-called small scope or initial level. Um, and related to the mantra and what Lama Zopa Rinpoche said about the mantra, that's the first Bekanze. The first Bekanze is to, um, you know, heal suffering, especially the more gross forms of suffering, like those in the unfortunate states of rebirth. And then the second level of the path is called the intermediate or middle level of the path. And so that's all about looking at samsara in general. Samsara meaning, it's sometimes translated as cyclic existence. So this is a situation where we aren't free to choose our experiences, to choose our rebirth, but we're under the control of karma and afflictions. It's really our karma and our afflictions that is deciding what happens to us, like as we go from one life to another, but also within one life. We don't want bad things happening to us, but they do. Bad things happen without choice, without control, and it's because of karma and afflictions that are still running the show, um, driving our life and our experiences. So as long as we're still in this situation where we're not free of karma and afflictions, then this is just a really unsatisfactory situation. I like to think of it as a prison. They do use that analogy in the teachings of samsara being like a prison. And I don't know if you've ever been in a prison, but it's a pretty grim situation. And we go in there and visit a prisoner and then we can leave. But they don't have that choice. The people who are in the prison, they have to stay there, and sometimes their whole life. That's their life, until they die. So nobody likes that. Nobody wants to be in a prison. We like our freedom, right? But samsara is like that. Samsara is like being in a prison, and the walls, the barbed wire, the guards, and so on that are keeping us in this prison are within ourselves. They're our own afflictions, our ignorance, our anger, our attachment, and our karma that we create under the influence of those afflictions. So we're carrying around within our mind the prison guards and bars and walls and gates and everything. They're keeping us stuck in this prison. So it takes a while to get a sense of that. And that's why we need to meditate on the situation of samsara and all the different kinds of sufferings and problems and deprivations that we experience in samsara. And this gives rise to what we call renunciation, or another term is the determination to be free, the determination to get out of this situation, to free ourselves, to escape from this prison of samsara. And it is possible, it is doable. Um, and the Buddha showed the way. So he was once in samsara too. He wasn't always enlightened, but was once an ordinary being like ourselves. But he found a way out. He managed to get out. So it's just like if you were in a prison and then somebody finds a way out, oh, there's this, this tunnel and you can go, and then they come back and they say, hey, come with me. Oh, that would be great. But yeah, so the Buddha found a way out and then, showed how to do it. And that's what his teachings are all about. So we're really fortunate that we can learn about these teachings and follow the Buddha's guidance to get out of this prison of samsara. So, yes, that's the middling scope of the lamrim. And as Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, that's represented by the second Bekanze, healing from the true origins of suffering. Karma and afflictions, those are the things that keep us in samsara, and we want to free ourselves from them, overcome them. And so how to do that? The ultimate solution is to understand the true nature of things, emptiness of inherent existence. So to develop the wisdom that understands emptiness, the true nature of all things. But that's not so easy to do. It's not, yeah. But we at least try. So we learn about emptiness, study it, discuss it to get an understanding of it, meditate on it. But that's something that takes time. And in the meantime, there are methods for dealing with afflictions when they arise so that they don't get out of hand, we don't get taken over by them. So we, as we go on in this retreat, I'll give some talks about different tools, different methods we can use for dealing with anger and attachment and so on, so that at least we can stop ourselves from creating more causes of suffering, more things that will keep us stuck in samsara. So afflictions, greed, hatred, ignorance, pride, jealousy, and so on are not permanent fixtures in our mind, permanent factors of our mind. They are impermanent phenomena, and there are remedies, solutions to them, and a total cure is possible. Being completely healed, cured of these afflictions. It does take time. It's not magic, not instant, but if we keep working, we can reduce them and eventually be free of them. And that's the way to get out of samsara. And then there's the third level of the lamrim, called sometimes called the advanced level or the great scope. And this is the bodhisattva path. So basically what this involves is extending the renunciation or the determination to be free from samsara to all living beings, to realize there's all these other beings who are also in this prison of samsara, and it just wouldn't be right to escape, get myself out, and then walk away and leave everybody else still suffering in samsara. So someone who feels that way, who feels, no, I don't want to just help myself. I want to help others. I want to help all other beings be free of samsara. So there's a way to do that as well. In fact, that's what the Buddha did. He didn't just free himself, but his goal was to free all other beings. So he's totally dedicated to not giving up on anybody, but being there for every living being until everyone has become free of samsara. So those who want to be like the Buddha, who want to um, follow, emulate him and follow that example, then this is the essence of the great scope of the lamrim. So there we find the methods for developing bodhicitta, the aspiration to become a Buddha, to help all living beings, basically by developing love and compassion, and then making those stronger and stronger until you feel, I must work for the benefit of all beings. I must become a Buddha to help all living beings. So it takes time to, we generate that thought in the beginning of meditations and so on, but it's probably still quite superficial. But to be able to feel that way from our heart and to make that like our whole reason for being and everything we do, that's something that takes time. But there are methods for doing that. And then once you do generate that thought of becoming a Buddha for the benefit of all beings, then there's the 6 perfections. Those are the main practices that are done for the attainment of enlightenment. Because enlightenment doesn't happen just because you want it. You have to create the causes. And the causes are mainly these 6 perfections: giving or generosity, ethics, having good ethical conduct, patience or fortitude, learning how to put up with difficult people and difficult situations without losing, kindness and getting angry. So it's, overcoming anger. And then joyous effort, having this joy to do what's virtuous, this untiring energy to engage in virtue, creating good karma, merit, the causes of enlightenment. And then concentration, learning to keep the mind focused without distraction and sleepiness and so on. And then wisdom, perfection of wisdom, developing the understanding of emptiness. So those are the 6 perfections. So those are the main topics of that 3rd level of the lamrim. And the mantra, Rinpoche said that's represented by the Maha Bekanze, great healing, great elimination of suffering, of pain. Because it's not just oneself that you're working for, you're healing, but your goal is to heal all living beings, free all of them from suffering. So that's just to give you some idea of what the lamrim is all about. But there's a lot of details as you go through each of those 3 levels, 3 scopes. So I'll now start talking about the sadhana, the practice that you started doing this morning, and you'll be doing again and again each day of the retreat. So, okay, so it starts with visualizing the medicine Buddha above one's head. So it says, above the crown of your head is a lotus. So I think we've probably all seen a lotus flower. They're really beautiful. But the lotus is, the petals are sort of opened. So they're spread out flat. And also, as was probably mentioned, when we do this sort of visualization, everything's made of light. So every aspect of the visualization is made of light. So it's just like pure non-physical light. Although I guess light is physical, but not in the sense of being solid. So it's just pure radiant light. And people sometimes say they have difficulty with that, but maybe it's helpful to think of a rainbow. We've all seen rainbows. When you see a rainbow in the sky, um, it's not solid, although it can sometimes look really solid, but we know it's not solid. We could put our hand right through it if we could even get up close to it. But yeah, that might be a helpful analogy to thinking of how to visualize a Buddha or other things that we visualize. So it's like appears and it's very bright, luminous, radiant, but not something solid like that would resist us if we were to touch it. So there's the lotus, and then in the middle of that is the moon disk. So it's like a disk of light lying flat, and it represents the moon. And then that's the seat for the medicine Buddha. And it says here, it's your root guru, the Dharmakaya essence of all the Buddhas. So that's one thing I didn't mention about the lamrim. Actually, the very first topic of the lamrim is about spiritual teachers and how to, because in order to reach enlightenment, we do need to have a teacher, although you can have multiple teachers, but you need at least one teacher that is guiding you. It said that nobody ever reached enlightenment on their own without a teacher, just reading books, watching YouTube videos and so on. You need living teachers. And I think one reason for that is because reading books or other sources of information, if it's kind of flat, it's kind of one-dimensional. It can help us get some understanding, some notions, some ideas about what it means to follow the spiritual path and develop these excellent qualities. But it's hard to really get a sense of what it means to be that way, like to be a compassionate person or to be someone who's totally dedicated to helping others. If you don't have living, breathing examples of that, if you don't have teachers that you can observe, be with them, physically present, and observe how they do things, how they act, how they talk, and so on. So that makes the whole thing three-dimensional rather than just one-dimensional. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? So it really makes a big difference when you have living teachers living the path, practicing the path, to just fill out the whole sense of what it means to follow this path and cultivate these qualities and live along this path. So yeah, teachers are needed, but we also need to be careful when it comes to choosing teachers, because there are people who set themselves up as teachers and they make claims about their qualities and their realizations and their visions and this and that and so on. So we shouldn't just believe what someone says, but we need to check carefully a teacher, make sure they really are genuine, they really do have the right qualities. And it's said, like in the past, someone who's checking out a teacher and trying to determine who their teacher is, they might spend as much as 12 years observing a teacher before making that decision. Okay, this person is genuine and I'm going to follow them. So maybe we don't have to spend that much time, but we should at least spend some time, like maybe a couple of years. Don't just rush into it. The point is, don't rush into deciding someone is a teacher just the first time you meet them. yeah, because again, people can sometimes make claims about their qualities and their realizations, but then it turns out that, they're just exaggerating or even inventing things, lying. So we do have to be careful. And yeah, there's stories, very, very tragic stories of people who do rush into getting involved with a teacher and then discovering. I met this one woman who told me she and her husband had been followers of a particular guru probably back in the 60s or 70s. And I don't know, I can't remember how long they were following this person for, but then they found out that this teacher was using drugs and was doing other things as well that were not ethical, were not proper, and was hiding it, not being genuine. So they were really disillusioned, and the husband just felt never again, just like close the door to any spiritual teacher, any spiritual path. He didn't want any more to do with it. And the wife, wasn't quite that extreme, but it took her many years to get to the point where she was willing to try again. And but yeah, that's really sad when that happens, that people can become totally disillusioned with any spiritual teacher and any spiritual path after one bad experience. So we wouldn't want that to happen. And then there's also stories about people getting abused. Yeah, which is very sad. So yeah, it's important to be careful, not rash, not just rushing into. Right. In the meantime, we can learn from teachers. You can learn from a teacher and start practicing, but just take your time getting to know the teacher before making a commitment. But anyway, we do at some point need to commit ourselves to at least one teacher, and then there's guidelines on how to practice in relation to a teacher, how to be respectful, how to behave respectfully, in our behavior, but also in our mind, not be critical and quick to find fault and so on. So that's like a whole teaching in itself on how to relate to spiritual teachers. So some of you may have already taken that step and decided on a teacher, a spiritual teacher. So if you do have a teacher, a spiritual teacher, then you think that when you're doing a practice like this, Medicine Buddha, you think that your teacher and the Medicine Buddha are one. It's actually your teacher, your spiritual teacher, who is in the form of the Medicine Buddha. And if you're not at that point, if you haven't yet found a teacher, made the commitment to a teacher, then you can just think, this figure of the Medicine Buddha above my head is one with all the Buddhas, all the Buddhas, all the objects of refuge. If you may feel devotion to spiritual teachers you haven't actually met, like the Dalai Lama. A lot of people feel very inspired by the Dalai Lama and watch his teachings, read his books, and just, feel that he is like my teacher. So that's a possibility as well, that you feel that way about a particular teacher. So you could think that, the Medicine Buddha that I'm visualizing is one with or inseparable from my spiritual teacher. And also, it says here the Dharmakaya essence of all the Buddhas. So Dharmakaya is the term for the Buddha's mind, omniscient mind, with all the wisdom and knowledge and excellent qualities that the Buddha's mind has. So this is also part of the practice, is to think that my teacher is the manifestation of the Dharmakaya mind of all the Buddhas. So that's what we're visualizing in the space above our head. Then there's a description. He's blue, like the color of lapis, and radiates blue light. So that's actually in the sutra It's said that the medicine Buddha is, radiating this beautiful blue light in all directions. And then right hand on his right knee, holding the stem of this medicinal plant. Left hand in the lap, holding a bowl filled with nectar. Sitting in the Vajra position. That's what we normally call the full lotus position. But on the it's called Vajra position in the Sanskrit tradition. And then wearing the robes of a monk, saffron robes. Although the paintings, usually the robes look kind of more reddish. I'm not sure, maybe because Tibetan tradition. And then he has all the signs and marks of a Buddha. So it's said that, so the Buddha has the Dharmakaya, mind. The mind of a Buddha is called the Dharmakaya. And then to benefit others, to benefit sentient beings, the Buddha's mind will manifest in different forms. And it's said that a Buddha can manifest in any form at all, even as animals or as trees or as bridges or whatever, any kind of form that could be beneficial for somebody, to help them, wake up and start taking an interest in something more than just this life and start following the path. So one type of form of a Buddha is called, there's Sambhogakaya. This is, it translates as complete enjoyment body. So that's a form that a Buddha will take to teach higher level bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas who are at a high level of the path and getting close to enlightenment. So they need sort of special teachings and care and guidance. So Buddha will manifest in the form of a Sambhogakaya to teach them and guide them. And that particular form has what are called the signs and marks. So there's specific features of a Buddha's form. And there's 32 signs and 32, there's something that's called major signs, the 32 major signs, and then 80 minor ones. And they include things like, on the top of the Buddha's head is, they call it sometimes a bump, a head bump, but it's called an ushnisha, crown protrusion. So this is a unique feature of a Buddha. And then other signs, I don't remember all of them, but on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet, there's this image of a wheel of Dharma. So there's these different signs that indicate someone is a fully enlightened Buddha. And these result from virtue that a Buddha created before they were Buddha, but while they were a bodhisattva, following the bodhisattva path. And, just doing a lot of good deeds and, many, many, many things. And so as a result of that, over many lifetimes, then when they become a Buddha, they have these signs and marks. So they just indicate that that person, that being is a Buddha, a fully enlightened Buddha. So we don't have to know what those are. We can just think, okay, the medicine Buddha above my head has all those signs and marks. Because it's also said that just to be able to see the signs and marks of a Buddha, you have to have the right karma. Because at the time of the Buddha, when Shakyamuni Buddha was in the world, walking around and teaching people and so on, there were some disciples who had particularly pure karma, very good, pure minds and good karma. And they were able to see those signs and marks on the Buddha's body. But others were not. And in fact, some people saw the Buddha as just a good for nothing. Really, it's like, They thought, oh, he's taking all these men away and making them monks, and they're just useless. They're not doing anything for society. So there were people who didn't like the Buddha and had negative attitudes towards him and even wanted to get rid of him, wanted to kill him. So not everybody saw the Buddha as somebody who had good qualities and was doing good things in the world. So they say it depends on one's own mind, one's karma, and if you have more or less afflictions in the mind. Then the prayer of refuge in bodhicitta. So this is where we renew our refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and generate the bodhicitta motivation of wanting to follow the path, practice generosity and the other far-reaching practices. So that refers to the 6 perfections. We usually use the term perfection, 6 perfections, but the literal translation of the Sanskrit term is far-reaching practice, or it's actually more like gone beyond. The term actually means gone beyond or going beyond. The idea is by practicing these 6 things, you will go beyond samsara and reach the state of Buddhahood. So there are practices to ferry you across the ocean of samsara to the other shore of enlightenment. So generosity, as I mentioned before, ethics, patience, joy, effort, concentration, and wisdom. So we're saying there, I will do those 6 things and create merit in order to reach Buddhahood. So here it says, this version says, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. But a few years ago, we decided to change that. And I don't know how it is on the screen when you read this. Does it say, I will attain Buddhahood? Because we thought it sounds a little wishy-washy to say, may I attain Buddhahood? And it's more kind of firm, I will attain Buddhahood. So that's how we've been reciting the prayer. Who led the practice this morning? So did you say, I will attain Buddhahood, or may I? Yeah, anyway, maybe we can make some changes to this before it's finalized. I will attain Buddhahood. Making a very strong commitment. So people sometimes wonder, why do we have to do things 3 times? Why not just once? Anybody ever wonder about that? I mean, one reason could be just to make sure we do it right. Because if we just do it once, maybe our mind is wandering elsewhere. We're not really thinking about what we're saying. But if we do it 3 times, there's a greater chance that maybe one of those times we'll have the right state of mind, full attention and really feeling what we're saying. But there's probably more significant reasons than that. It just makes it firmer in our mind to do it 3 times. We want to really make our mind familiar, strongly acquainted, strongly habituated to these kind of thoughts. So doing it 3 times is more powerful than once. Then there's really, really beautiful prayer of the 4 immeasurables. So these are the 4 immeasurables. 4, the very positive, virtuous, beneficial attitudes with regard to all sentient beings. And they sometimes come in different orders. So the order here is first equanimity. Equanimity is it's the opposite of being biased, being discriminating, where we like some people and others we don't like, and then there's others we're kind of indifferent to. So that's most of us, ordinary beings. This is how we are when it comes to other beings. And So equanimity is to overcome that tendency and feel equal concern, equal respect for everyone. Feel that everyone deserves our, at least our respect and our concern and our care. We go on from there to cultivate love and compassion and the wish to benefit each and every living beings. But they say we have to start by evening the playing field. Is that the term they use? Yeah. Making everyone equal in our mind. Otherwise, if we don't do this step, then we develop, we work on developing love and compassion, then there's the danger that our mind will be thinking, oh, may all sentient beings be happy, except that one. May all sentient beings be free of suffering, except that one. They deserve to suffer. So this is our, tendency, is to leave out certain people from our good thoughts and our good wishes. And that doesn't work. I mean, it's not right to do that. And also for the attainment of Buddhahood, for attaining enlightenment, it's not possible if you leave out even one sentient being, if you exclude even one sentient being from your love and your compassion and your open-heartedness and concern, you won't get there. You won't make it to enlightenment if you leave anybody out. So this is to make our mind balanced. But although the way it's mentioned here is we're wishing all sentient beings to have equanimity, but that includes ourselves. It's not like I want everybody else to have equanimity, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to hang on to my anger towards that person, my resentment towards that person. So not like that, but all sentient beings, including me, may all of us have equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. Of course, that's not easy to do, but at least to see that that is something we want to do. We want to do it ourselves, and we want to help others to do it as well. Just looking at how much suffering comes from having these attitudes, having anger and hatred, having attachment. I mean, attachment, it's like, I like this person and I want to make them happy. I want to treat them well. But when we're like that, inevitably we're going to have others who are our enemies. Anybody who doesn't like me and my friend, anyone who doesn't do what we want, they are an enemy. So it's very hard to have attachment and also uh, and not have anger and aversion as well. So we'll look at that more later. But yeah, attachment is harmful and leads to suffering and problems. So we do want to help others and also ourselves to be free of that way of thinking, of attachment, clinging to some, and aversion, pushing away others. So here we wish, and this version of the four immeasurable prayers has 4 parts to it. So the first one, where it says how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. That's an aspiration, just feeling how great that would be. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't that be great if that could happen? And then the second sentence says, may they abide in this way. So that's getting a little stronger. That's like, oh, yeah, I would really like that to happen. And then the third one is taking on responsibility oneself. I shall cause them to abide in this way. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do whatever I can to bring that about. And then the fourth line is asking Medicine Buddha to help me, inspire me to be able to do it, because it's not easy to do that. So, asking for help from someone who's already done it, who's already gone all that way. So that's equanimity. And then the second one is love or loving kindness, wishing all sentient beings to have happiness and the causes of happiness. And then compassion, wishing all sentient beings to be free of suffering and the causes of that. And then the last one is, it's called immeasurable joy or rejoicing sometimes, but joy. So this is where we wish everyone to have perfect and pure happiness, happiness that's relatively free from suffering. So we want them to have good rebirths in their future lives and eventually attain freedom from samsara altogether, the excellent bliss of liberation, nirvana. And so again, each of those verses has those 4 parts to it. Aspiring for it, wishing it to happen, taking on some responsibility to do it oneself, and then asking help from the medicine Buddha. So I haven't gotten very far, but we have another teaching after lunch, so I'll continue. And I'll leave some time as well for questions that you may have. There's just a few minutes left. If anyone has a question, burning question you'd like to ask.
Hello. You said that the Buddhas have the power to how did you say it? Manifest in an animal or a plant or a tree. Sometimes I feel that way, but where is the line? Like, how can you recognize that this is the Buddha and not be delusional?
This is a really good point, and I once heard one of my teachers, one of the wonderful lamas, give an explanation of this, and at the time I was like, I didn't even think this was possible, but I hung on to it. So, because he said, when we're practicing, we're praying to Medicine Buddha or whatever, and we might actually have a vision, just spontaneously, that Buddha will appear to us. And he said that it's possible that it's not really a Buddha. There are spirits, unseen beings that can sometimes take the form of Buddhas and like to play tricks on us maybe, or I don't know what their reason, their purpose, their motivation is, but that can happen. And so he he said we have to be careful and check if this supposed vision of a Buddha really is a Buddha. And what he said was to visualize 3 syllables, Om, Ah, and Hum. The Om, which represents the Buddha's body, you visualize at the crown chakra, inside the head, kind of inside the brain. You visualize white Om, or just visualize Om at that point. And then Ah is at the throat chakra, and then Hum at the heart chakra. So it isn't mentioned in this practice, but in some practices, when we're visualizing Buddhas, then we visualize those 3 letters. They represent the body and the speech and the mind of a Buddha. So he said, imagine those 3 letters at this appearance, this vision, and if it's genuine, it will stay. And if it's a fake, it will disappear. So at the time, I was like, okay. But I still haven't had a vision of a Buddha to test that. But just, it was just kind of shocking to me to know that could happen, that there could be fake visions. But it's good to know that, just to be sure, because otherwise, if it is a spirit and it's trying to play a trick on you, and it might tell you to do something that isn't virtuous, and it could be harmful. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And yeah, I think you can visualize those letters in like Roman letters. If you don't know the Sanskrit or the Tibetan or whatever, just Oma and Hum. But later I read some story. I think Thomas Merton was a great Catholic monk and mystic. I think he put together a book of stories of the Desert Fathers. These were early monks, Christian monks who lived in the desert in Palestine, what do they call it, area? Middle East, in the Middle Eastern desert. They were meditators and practitioners. And yeah, I think there was this really cool stories. One of the stories was, one of these monks was on his deathbed. And as he was getting close to death, he had some kind of vision of heaven, really beautiful, dazzling vision of heaven. And then after some time, he realized, I don't know, it's like he realized it was fake. It was just maybe they talk about this in Christianity, that the devil can sometimes cause things to appear. So it seems like he had some sense that this wasn't the real thing. And so he said, get out. It made it go away. And then the real one appeared. So I was mystified by that story, but I thought maybe it's kind of similar, that there could be beings that play tricks on us like that, and we have to know how to determine what's real and what's fake. So we always need to be kind of take things with a grain of salt, as we say. Be a little bit skeptical, not just immediately, oh, Buddha is appearing to me. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Okay, so let's stop there and do a dedication of our merit.